Итак, мы продолжаем нашу серию докладов и поприветствуем следующего нашего спикера, Karsten Nebe, с докладом Approaching Human-Centered Innovation. Пожалуйста, встречаем.
You have an audio? Okay, good. Thank you for being here. It's a great honor for me to have the second speech. And it could have been that we have, worked out together our both speeches because I think they nicely fit together. So there are many aspects of what Hans said which I would like to continue talking about. Let me start with introducing myself. I'm a professor for usability engineering and digital fabrication at a university in Germany. So when you're interested in usability engineering, you can come and join my master's class. I'm basically doing human-centered design since about 17, 18 years now. I did it as minor in my study, did my PhD in that field, and I'm working as a usability professor, but also as a consultant for companies since a couple of years. And 5 years ago, I came across Google Ventures Design Sprint. Some of you may have heard about that. It's a nice approach. I'm going to talk about how to foster innovation in a very short period of time, because as Hans has said, time matters, so fail fast. Failure is an option, and it should be considered as part of your procedure. So I'm going to talk about human-centered innovation and how to approach this. I really like your example, Stefan, about 2/3 of all IT projects fail. So this is one of the knockdown facts. And there are a couple of more. It's good that you have seen the advertisement. I didn't see it, I didn't take a picture, but I can imagine it. Because 80 to 90% of products fail in the market. About 80% of projects disappear within 4 years. 90% of mobile apps don't produce any money. 4 or 5 startups lose funders' money. 16 to 50% of strategic projects are abandoned. And now you can think about your situation, whether you're in a small entrepreneur company or a big company, and whether you have kind of similar feelings and expectations and experiences with that. So, time to jump? I don't know. I wouldn't say no. But we should ask ourselves, what are the reasons for insufficient market fit? Why do our products fail? So why do innovations fail? It's hard to answer, to be honest, but how do innovations succeed is the more interesting question, I guess. And this is something I would like to approach and to talk about. I will talk about it at the end. So it's like a forecast to something you will hopefully get at the end of my talk. So what makes a product innovative? Of course, first of all, it's about change. You create new products because you want to change the situation. You will address new markets, probably, eventually make money with it. This is often caused by technology push or market pull. It's always about improvement. Innovation is about improvement, making things better. And sometimes the process of innovation is incremental or radical or disruptive. You may have heard about these terms. Incremental means it's not a sweeping change. There are small increments of innovation, of improvement, you can say. Google Mail, for example, started with a very simple interface, just the basic functionality of providing email to your users. And they succeeded. They were very good in the market. And they increased the features and functionality without a big danger to their business. So incrementing is a small step. And an example for radical innovation is the Pebble smartwatch. They launched the watch in 2012. I don't know whether you know this. The first smartwatch, really cheap and really good. And then 5 years later, almost 5 years later, Apple took on this market and created the Apple Watch. But they changed the way we expected a watch to work in a radical way. So it's about meaningful products. Meaningful mean you have to consider the market, but also the customer and the end user. The end user is the person using the software. So innovation starts with an idea. And I guess all of you have genius ideas. have had genius ideas, and some of them made them into a product, maybe. But it's not just about having an idea. Innovation is about the process about putting the idea into practical use. So when we talk about innovation, we have to understand that there are several activities that you have to perform, that you have to do in order to achieve a certain goal. And there's also a difference between the entrepreneurs and the, let's say, established, old settled companies. When an entrepreneur has an idea, he or she is willing to share this idea to get different opinions from anyone. Whereas the old established companies try to hide and seek their ideas. You know, it's a secret, this is the next business. So they don't get any feedback on that. So they develop their idea in silence. So we make innovations because we want to create a better world. Yeah, sure, maybe. But we definitely want to create a competitive advantage. We want to make money. We want to make revenue out of it. That's the reason why we want to innovate. It's about challenging ideas. The Wright brothers are a good example of challenging, because at the time when they invented flying, there were many huge companies with almost endless amount of money aiming for the same result, which is flying. But the companies wanted to create machines that fly. So they invested in engineering and all this stuff. Whereas the Wright brothers just wanted to fly, and they didn't have the money. So they found a practical and pragmatic approach to innovate and to create something that flies. Yes, of course, it's about risks. It's always some risk, but you can see any risk as an opportunity, because if it's a risk, nobody else has solved the risk, maybe, so it's an opportunity for you to address. So at this very moment, I guess millions of people across the world are pouring their hearts, their souls, their hopes in order to create up new ideas that may fail miserably. At the same time, just a very few amount of people have also genius ideas, and they may succeed. Maybe it's the next Google, maybe it's next Twitter, or something like that. So let's have a look on some of these examples. You may know, the iPod. The iPod was launched in 2001, and it was a great success. And why was it a great success? Because, not just because of the design, but it was the first thoughtful and extensive solution between content and hardware. Apple understood that it requires a tool with the other tool to make music listening a kind of experience. And even though the iPod was just available, or the software, the iTunes software was just available for Mac users, it was the fastest MP3 player, selling MP3 player in the market. I don't know whether you know the Sedgway. Yeah, Sedgway is a wonderful device. How many of you own one of those? Okay. You got one? Very good. Very good. So here, okay, you see. So they launched the product in 2002. And Dean Carman said, he's the founder of Sedgway, said, it will be to the car what the car has been to the horse and the buggy. So the biggest invention ever. And there were some venture capitalists saying, okay, the sales will be about 1 billion within a very short period of time, the fastest reinvest ever. So they spent $100 million to develop this device. And they miserably failed. They failed because the product was licensed as a street vehicle. And in some countries, you're not allowed to drive the device on the gangways. So, and there's another issue, which was the price. The starting price was $3,000 up to $7,000. So nobody wanted to pay that much for such a device. So they miserably failed. So if you have an idea, good. But you have to test whether this idea is the right idea. To say it with the word of Alberto Savoia, it's all about the right it. The idea is the it. So what you can do with this idea is to get opinions, get feedback, get ideas from some other people on your initial it. And what you get is, lots of ideas are fuzzy, are abstract. You get opinions which are subjective, and all this together is like a big ball in a fuzzy ball of abstraction and opinions. So every one of us has a different opinion. And maybe even worse, it's something like this. Lots of different opinions. So the longer it takes to evaluate, to test your idea, the more fuzzy it gets. And most good ideas are destined to fail because they initially sound very useful, very meaningful, but then they turn out to be useless or different as originally anticipated. So they don't address the user needs, as Hans has said. They maybe don't fit to the market, or they don't create any value. And sorry, but maybe yours will fail as well. But failure is part of innovation. It's part of the process. The only thing you have to consider is to fail fast. It's important to identify the wrong it's quickly. And cheap, of course. Because then, if you do this, you have time to try to test the its, other its, new its, changes, variations of the it more often, more frequent, until you have the elusive right it. Prototyping. We have heard about prototyping. Traditional prototyping and prototypes can help you to validate market potential, get user feedback, customer feedback, and to test your ideas in an objective way. Not subjective, but objective. Very good. And I guess most of you know prototyping and use prototyping. The more you invest, like in this graph, you see the level of confidence increases by the complexity of the prototype that you have. You can start with wireframes and sketches. Even lipsticks on a napkin can help you to get feedback on your idea. And a high-fidelity prototype, of course, will give you more confidence of whether you are doing the right thing. Up to the real product. If your real product is in use in the market, you get to know whether it's useful or not, and whether you will fail after 4 years or not. I guess you can confirm this, right? Yes. But the more you invest in something, the harder it is to let it go. It's like love, okay? So once you have a proper prototyping working, and think about yourself and your company, once you have a proper prototype working, it's hard to say, okay, let's throw it away and start from scratch. Maybe we add a different, this feature, and this will change it. The customer will like it, the user will like it. But that's not the truth. Imagine that you realize the failure of your product, not in the stage of prototyping, but also but even later in the stage of having the product delivered to the customer. Think about the time that you've spent. And prototypes quite often turn into something what is called product types. So they evolve in a way that they become products. And you lose track. So they're going so far that you can't go back. So make sure that you, as quick and as cheaply as you can, verify that you're building the right it before you build it right. Be brave, tackle your risks, but do this quickly. And I want to share one approach with you. It's just one approach out of many to address human-centered innovation. As I said at the very beginning, some of you may have heard about the Google Ventures Design Sprint. It's not a method that I have invented. It's a method that is well documented in this book from Jay Knapp. It's open to public. You can read it and you can apply it. Yesterday we had a wonderful workshop about Google Ventures Design Sprint. The basic idea of Google Ventures Design Sprint is a 5 days fast-paced process throughout prototyping and testing to get feedback from your customer within just 5 days. I want to show a brief video of some of my students. We did this a couple of weeks ago for a specific product. Hopefully you have audio. There's no audio?
Can we set in not a VMI, but...
Just a second, sorry for that. There, I got it, just give me a second. Should work now. No, okay, just give me a second. It's in here. Yep. Now it should work.
The design sprint is a great way
No
to
audio?
go from a problem to a prototype that you tested with real users in just 5 days. On Monday, we focused on the problem. We wanted.
Okay.
The design sprint is a great way to go from a problem to a prototype that you tested with real users in just 5 days. On Monday, we focused on the problem. We wanted to design an app that would make it very easy for people to volunteer within their community and help each other out. So we came up with a lot of ideas and we talked to a lot of people to decide on a direction and a long-term goal. On Tuesday, we came up with a lot of diverging ideas. Then, on Wednesday, we decided on the best solution and specified how that would work in detail. Then, on Thursday, we worked on the prototype and getting that ready for our user testing, which took place on Friday, where we interviewed lots of people and got lots of valuable feedback. And that's how we went from start to finish from Monday to Friday, having nothing but a problem in the beginning, to having a fully tested prototype by Friday. Our experience with the sprint was really good because it was the first time we were able to go from a problem to a solution in such a short time frame, and it allowed us to work with people from different backgrounds and have everybody contribute their ideas. And the best thing about the sprint is that it's structured in a way that only the best ideas win, not the loudest person. And at the end, of course, the most important thing is that we got feedback on our ideas instead of just going with our gut. The design sprint is a great way to kickstart your project and get good results quickly, and we'll definitely be doing more of them in the future.
So the sprint really takes you like a rocket from an initial idea to something to show to the customer. Just briefly to summarize what we've seen in the video, Monday is about defining the goal, defining the overall long-term goal, about what do you want to achieve, maybe in 3 years, 5 years from now. It's not the short wins, it's about the big innovations, the big wins. You involve user input, ask the experts to get opinions and get detailed information about this specific question that you have in mind. So you select a target at the end of day 1 to go on for the rest of the week. Tuesday is about developing solutions, creating sketches, creating alternative designs within the team of 5 to 7 people in the room. On Wednesday, you have to decide. You have a lot of great ideas. Yesterday, we had just half an hour to sketch, and we had 13 different solutions on the wall, and it was really wonderful to see where the variations are. So you pick the right solutions, the best solution, the winning solutions on Wednesday, and then you create a kind of storyboard, which is the template for prototyping on Thursday. And on Friday, you have your customers with you. And this puts a lot of pressure on you because on Monday you already do the invitation for the customers on Friday. So there's no way out. You have to deliver. You have to have a result on Friday. So the really advantage of this methodology or method is to shortcut the endless debates. You may know this. You know, when you're in a team, you always start discussing about certain features and functions, and you end up in maybe nothing. It is about quickly understanding whether your idea is any good and to get feedback from your customers as early as possible while showing them a realistic prototype, getting real clear data from your customer. So what you do is you show a real product, kind of real looking product to your customer. You see the reactions of your customer before you make any expensive investments. I mean, of course, 5 days is an invest. 5 days, 7 people full-time, yes. But compare this to many of your situations where it takes months or years to come up with something testable. So, and when a sprint is successful, wonderful. So you have shown that you've had a good idea. That's great. But even if you fail, even if you don't find the right it in this sprint, the only invest you had is 5 days. So it's like, it's learning the hard way without the hard way. The hard way is you fail, but it's not the hard way on the long run. So usually, I think most of you will agree on this, is before you have something to test, you already had a lot of invest of time and efforts. And here it's vice versa. You start with an idea, you test the idea before you do any development. So it's test the right it, test it right before you do it right. That's the idea of Surveyor. So make it fast and make it with minimal efforts. Starting with a challenge, ending with some learnings. The outcome of the sprint is not a product, it's a learning outcome. And as I said, this is just one method how to approach human-centered innovation. We have heard about design thinking. To me, design thinking is like cooking. Okay? You know there are ingredients, spices, and you have to mix them up, and you know how to boil and to make noodles, whatever. So it's about the general methodology of cooking. And the Google Ventures Design Sprint, to me, is like a recipe. It's one-way, precise instructions of how to proceed, how to approach this innovation process. And there are many others, lean and jobs to be done and whatever, many other solutions for that. Well, I promised to say something about why innovations fail. Because they are not meaningful. They don't address the market, they don't address the customer, and they don't address the user's needs. That's the most reason why products fail. Misinterpretations, wrong expectations. And quite often, it's also because of the time to market. It takes you a long time to create something to show to your customer before you realize, is it good or is it bad? More interesting, how do innovations succeed? You have to understand that innovation is not just the idea, it's a process. It's a sequence of activities that you have to do to get feedback, to get information about your idea, to get opinions that you can kind of interpret or analyze. The users are the main target of innovation. Users can give input to your idea, but they can't solve your problem. They can't give the answer. But you should keep the user in mind. This is always important when you talk about innovation. Users have demands, they have needs, and this is something you have to address throughout the process of innovation and, of course, development. Companies need to find out what the real meaning of product is. That's also something what Hans has said before. It's all about the right it. And I can just recommend to go for the challenge yourself, facing the unknown. But do this quick. It's important to do this in a quick way, not on the long run. Because if you do it like that, you have time to iterate, to create various iterations of your idea, not the prototype, of your idea. If it's not the right it, try a different one. Don't try to, fall in love with your initial idea. And you do this until you have the elusive right, it. So, and you have to find your own approach to fast forward into the future. The design sprint is one way of doing that. 5 days, and you have something at the end, which is a forecast of the future that you show to your customer. And as I said, the design sprint is just one way of doing it. And the reason why you have to find something like this is because of invest. You have to find something that allows you to test it before you make it. That's it. Thank you.
Уважаемые гости, у кого есть вопросы к нашему спикеру?
Thank you. It was really amazing, and a lot of questions come here. But the main, how do you choose which idea is really worth it during design sprint? Mm-hmm. When you have 10 ideas, any techniques or just gut feeling or so on?
Well, before you start with this sprint as an example, you have to justify by yourself what is the most relevant idea for your market, maybe. What is the idea which may create the most revenue for you? And if they are all kind of the same, go for all of them. Yeah, because it's not compared to maybe what you know from your daily life experience. Like, okay, you have an idea, you do some invest, and you start doing it. And if you do something like the sprint, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it. It's just 5 days of invest, and then you know whether the idea is worth it or not. So if it's 10, it's 5 by 10 days to invest, and then you have the answer of the good ideas or not.
Okay, pretty clear, thank you. And how do you need to validate the idea?
How?
How much, sorry?
Well, how much is hard to say. You have to have something to show. You have to have something that transports the idea into something that is tangible for their customer, for the user. And it can be a prototype, like I guess most of us create, or most of you create apps or applications or desktop applications or web interface, whatever. So it can be a realistic prototype like that. But it could also be something physical. It could also be a prototype of the Segway to show to your customer, something that drives,
Yeah, but does 10 opinions or 15 opinions enough so you understand it works?
You do the testing, just the default is do testing with 5 users. Because but there are some scientific studies on how much user feedback you need before you have kind of identified the most curious problems by Nielsen and someone else. 5 is a good starting point. So the schedule in the sprint for Friday is having 5 users testing the idea with, and then you have initial opinions and feedback about that. And if you want to go on, you go on.
Cool, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
У кого еще есть вопрос?
Hello, thank you for the presentation. So I have the next question. You told us about design thinking approach, about 5 days sprint approach. On your opinion, what are the minuses of these approaches? Just really curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's a good question. So don't expect that any of these approaches will give you all the answers. It's just, the sprint is a good example. It's a forecast on something you have in mind. It doesn't give you all the user requirements. It doesn't give you all the technical requirements. So there's a lot of work to be done afterwards. The major difference is you test the idea at the very beginning, and not at the end, not after an investment of creating something sophisticated, you know, or sometimes if you have an idea for a project, your CEO or boss will say, okay, make a specification, and then we can start talking about it. And then after the specification, make a market analysis, whatever, okay? Yes, you can do that, but this will cost a lot of time. And design thinking and methods like, or recipes like the sprint try to change that. The disadvantage or the cons of this approach is, once again, it is not the answer to everything. There are many things you have to do in addition. It doesn't give you all the answers. It doesn't replace a user analysis, I would say, or a technical analysis. I'm also from the field of usability engineering, and I know how difficult it is to get user needs and user requirements. And this is not the answer to user needs and user requirements. It's testing business opportunities.
Thank you for the presentation. Still, I have mixed feelings about that. For one hand, I can see this is a working solution. Somebody did that in 5 days, great. But when I'm thinking about the reality, my reality, a big company, 10,000 people, and reaching end users, it's hardly believable because development team at one place, customers throughout all over the world. I can't imagine how this can work in bigger organization.
It does. I did it already. Yeah. So
it would be interesting to talk about that. At least how you did that. Yes. It's hard to imagine.
Once again, this is not the answer to all the problems. This is not the answer to all the user needs. This is not the answer to a complex product. This is just testing the idea. And then if you have tested the idea, you know whether it's worth it to further go on and to invest. I know how hard it is to address the user needs and to create usable solutions, for sure. But this is more a strategic perspective on innovation.
Hi, thank you for the report. At the very beginning, you've said that lots of established companies resist change and resist sharing ideas, etc. Have you ever faced such resistance? And we all know that testing, as you have said, testing ideas fast are most beneficial. But how do you convince such companies that that's the right way? And have you ever faced it yourself? And do you have any practical advice how to handle that?
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. Yeah, I've faced this a couple of times, lots of times, almost any time, except in the situation where I'm specifically asked to do the sprint, because then the company already knows, okay, oh, there's this kind of methodology, and I want the guy to moderate the sprint. But based on my experience as a usability engineer, trying to integrate usability into a company, it's more or less similar, or innovation or usability doesn't matter. It's always hard. You have to convince the management, you have to give the right arguments, and there are, for example, if you create a usable solution at the very end, the return on invest, of course, is you have increased efficiency of the users using the system. I'll give you a simple example. If you go to a supermarket and you have the people, scanning the articles. 15 years ago, they had to type each number, right? To get the price into the system and then do the, it took long. There were long queues. Today, it's just beep, 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 beep. So there's an increased efficiency. It's easier for the user, less effort, less mental effort, and it also, at the same time, increases the business opportunities because you have less queues, more people rushing through, and more people go shopping because they don't see any queues. So such arguments, depending on the domain in which you work, you have to deliver to convince, okay, this is the outcome of such strategies, of such approaches. Thank you.
If you have an access to the users, is it better to involve them earlier, not on the 5th day?
Always. Always.
Okay,
I'm an advocate for the user, always. Involve the user as early as possible, as often as possible. Yes, definitively.
Так, еще вопросы?
Rob Fitzpatrick, in his funny book The Mom Test, also writes about the reasons of projects fails and how he pictures it. He tells, when we got an idea, we ask some of our friends, our business partners, what do you think about it? And they, just to be polite, answer that, yeah, this idea is great, but when it comes to the stage of the releasing, no one wants to buy our project. So what do you think about these reasons, and how can we avoid them?
Yeah, there's a very good book I can recommend. It's from Alberto Savoia, the guy I have cited a couple of times with the right it. It's called pretotyping. It's a different approach than prototyping. It's called pretotyping because it's pre-prototyping. And he's describing exactly this situation. He's saying this is thoughts land, you know, like where people don't know, and because they want to be polite, say, well, good idea, good idea. So, and he came up with a very simple approach of testing your idea as well. Create a prototype, do some measures at the very end, at the very beginning, to verify whether your idea is any good, and then go on. I can highly just recommend to have a look on the book. And the book is also not called a book, it's a preto book, because it's not printed, it's not finished. He said, okay, it's a prototype, it's a preto book, it's online, it's for free. Alberto Savoia, I can just recommend prototyping.
Так, давайте поблагодарим еще раз нашего спикера за великолепный доклад. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I have to leave immediately right now, more or less. If you want to get in contact with me, just you can QR code scan the LinkedIn link here, or send me an email, take a picture, and yeah, contact me. Thank you.